Welcome to episode 24 of the Stormcast, the world's best podcast. I'm your host, Stormy. We're live on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter, bringing you the latest and greatest news, stories, and updates going on around the world. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and it's a rainy yet warm 80 degrees outside. Crazy weather we got going on here in South Carolina. As always, the Stormcast is available everywhere you can find podcasts, so be sure to subscribe on YouTube, drop a 5-star review on Spotify, and follow on Twitter and Rumble. Your support on Patreon also keeps us going strong. All links are available down in the description below, and don't forget to like the video. So let's get into it. I hope everyone is having a good week so far. Before we get into today's Stormcast, I want to say there's a new video dropping this Friday. It's going to be a Sinners movie review that I did with my brother. So be on the lookout for that. It's a good video. The new movie Sinners, it was actually, well, let me not ruin it. Let me not spoil it. Go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and hit that post notification bell so you can get notified when that video drops this Friday. As always, we are continuing to work out and make progress recovery-wise. I've been trying to get in the swimming pool at least twice a week. I've been in the gym doing resistance, doing bag work as always, and trying to mix it up, trying to get stronger, trying to make gains because I got some important therapy I got coming up. So I'm trying to get my body right. I'll give you guys more details on that in the upcoming episodes. There is a podcast of the Stormcast dropping every Wednesday. We are being consistent, guys. We're, every Wednesday catch us here, and we're trying to get on that schedule where every Wednesday around this time, around 5:30, around the afternoon time, we're going to be going live. So moving on, we've got a subject that's got everyone talking. Of course, Diddy's federal sex trafficking trial and Cassie's explosive testimony going on live right now. Pretty crazy case. So let's get into this and see what's going on and what's the latest going on around this Diddy trial. From TMZ here, we got the Diddy trial highlights. Cassie testifies as the star witness. It's a crazy trial, guys. You got everything from sex to drugs to people getting urinated on in this trial. So it has been 3 days now since the trial has started. Of course, they ended up around 5 o'clock around this time. So day 3 has been wrapped up now. We can react to day 2. They don't let you watch it unless, I guess, you subscribe, or let's see if they let us react and watch this video. Let me also go and check in the chat, guys. Make sure everything sounds good real quick. Also go and check in the chat, there we go. All right, sounding good. So we'll just start with from day 1 and 2. I'll give you guys updates for that. Another big day is in the books for the Diddy sex trafficking trial, and today was all about Cassie Ventura's testimony as the prosecutor's star witness. Cassie took the stand and testified about freak-offs, Diddy's violent temper, his affection for baby oil, and how he made her feel objectified by men, namely by urinating in her mouth so much she started choking. Wow. Very graphic, very, serious allegations here.
Can never be all together without drama.
You're manipulative and you know it.
I think there's a video right here that we can look at, but guys, this is not gonna go down well for Diddy if he is, convicted and he is guilty of these crimes. He will be serving a very long sentence, more than likely into the end of his life. He will die in prison because he is 55 years old. and sex trafficking is a very serious crime.
How's he doing after it all?
So let's react. I think this is the singer's lawyer, Douglas Wigder, applauded Cassie for sharing her story when our photog got him outside the courthouse. And he told us she's likely to be on the stand all Wednesday, which was today, answering questions from prosecutors and being cross-examined by Diddy's legal team. So I think this is Douglas Wigder right here, her lawyer. Let's see what he has to say. Very used to TMZ. Please don't copyright me. All right.
How's Cassie doing after it all? How is she feeling? I know it must have been a lot to kind of recount all the experiences.
It was a long day. I'm just super proud of her.
Right. So how many more days can we see her?
I anticipate another half day of direct and probably another half day or so of cross-examination.
What do you think? Sorry, I'm like coming across.
So graphic.
Do you think it could be kind of
Again, it's not for me to decide how she did. It's up to the jury to decide. But we're very confident.
Gonna put it out there. Some people were saying that it could be hurting, damning to Cassie to kind of admit that she didn't mind the freak offs, but just not all the time. Where are you at with that?
I'm going to leave that to the capable hands of the government and ultimately to the jury.
Is Cassie in therapy? I could imagine she might need to have some kind of someone to talk to outside of this. And that's kind of a personal question, but people are saying that she might need something else after, going through everything that happened in the past again.
I'm not following your question. Sorry.
Will she consider therapy? Is that something that she could?
She will. She has been in therapy. I think she'll testify about that tomorrow.
Thank
you very much.
All right. So obviously Douglas Wigder there answering questions from the press after her examinations. He stated that she may be examined for another couple days. Obviously very composed, very calm there answering the questions, stating that he wanted to allow the court to make the decision ultimately, and it's not up to him to, but he was proud of her for how she did in court. Get yourself one of them boys as a lawyer. Of course, he's probably, one of them boys. Cassie also talked about her first freak off with Diddy and a male escort and got emotional during her testimony, telling the jury the freak offs felt like a job. She said she told Diddy she didn't want to participate, but went along with it because she didn't want to upset him or make him angry. Of course, guys, a woman, playing the victim card, not taking accountability, right? If she didn't want to do the freak offs, there's nothing stating here that he forced her or locked her in a room. She had the free will to participate in these things. Obviously, she wanted to, become close with Diddy because he is as you know, a mogul, highly respected and, looked upon in the music industry, for many years since, the 90s, and during the freak off, she states that she felt like it was a job. So that's, insinuating that, it was, she didn't want to do it there, but she did. So how is the jury going to, determine whether or not that she's innocent in this situation? Because, this is just so interesting to see what, how this is going to play out. Let's see. She also told the jury about physical abuse she suffered at Diddy's hand and about the time he beat her up in the hallway. Most of us have seen that video where she was in the hallway, and Diddy's in his bathrobe and she's, getting dragged in the hallway of that hotel, of a Los Angeles hotel, when she felt left a freak off before it was supposed to be over. An incident that was caught on camera. So most people have saw that. That was aired and exposed like December of last year, I believe. Not a good look for Diddy, obviously, but as far as sex trafficking, human trafficking that he's accused of, that really has nothing to do with that. I don't know how they could pretty much bring that up as evidence. Perhaps he was abusive physically, but it isn't a good look on Diddy. Diddy stared at Cassie as she entered the courtroom Tuesday morning, but she never looked his way, and he watched the jury as she shared her testimony. Cassie's husband, Alex Fine, was in the gallery to support her. And so this video right here, I believe, shows Alex Fine, her baby daddy and husband, leaving the courtroom. So let's check this out.
Watch yourself in the front. That man, what he doing? We getting a shot.
Can you imagine being the husband of Cassie and going to court and listening to all the stuff, all the sexual things she did with another man? He must be feeling absolutely torn apart inside and really humiliated, right? That's his wife and the mother of his children, but it doesn't seem like he cared to answer any questions or really cared too much. He just had a blank, expression. Didn't really make any sudden moves or comments or anything. So interesting what must be going on in his head as well. Diddy stared at Cassie as she entered the courtroom Tuesday morning, but she never looked his way. Okay, yeah, we just read that. He's charged with 5 federal counts, 2 charges of sex trafficking, 2 charges of transportation to engage in prostitution, and a single count of racketeering conspiracy. Diddy's pled not guilty, and his legal team says he's a swinger and not a criminal, and that the freak-offs with Cassie were consensual. Yeah, those are very serious crimes, right? Especially sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. I didn't even know that was a crime. See, there's all these crimes that you didn't even know were real, right? Or that existed until things like this happen, right? You don't know the law unless you're a lawyer most times. So not looking good for Diddy. I'm awaiting to see what day 3 is going to bring us on the trial. And shout out to the chat. If you join the chat, hit me with a W in the chat. We're going to get onto some other news. And some other news, here's what you need to know to get up to speed for robotics. So there's the Robotic Olympics going on, China's humanoid sports games. China is set to host the inaugural World Humanoid Robot Sports Games from August 15th to 17th, 2025 in Beijing. This pioneering event will showcase humanoid robots competing in various athletic and real-world performance categories. These competitions will be held in 2 iconic venues from the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the National Stadium Bird's Nest, and the National Speed Skating Oval Ice Ribbon. The event promises to blend advanced robotics with competitive sports, featuring strict rules and a global participation outlook. It represents a significant milestone in both the sports and robotics industries, highlighting technological innovation and international collaboration. We've got some article that follows this robotic event, of course, going on in China. It's Asia, where all the advancements in AI seem to be taking place. This article from Time of India, the Robot versus Robot, China to host first games 2005. Okay, let's Scroll down. So get ready for a sporting event like no other from August 15th to 17th. Okay, so we read that as well too. I just stuff keeps popping up here on the screen. Guys, sorry about that. Hold on. So we are sharing. All right, cool. So let's see what else. Oh gosh, stuff keeps popping up. Let's see what else we can find out about this event, because this is cool. I mean, a robot sporting event, like that's something I would actually want to like attend. That seems pretty sick. So this is the first full-scale multi-sport competition for humanoid robots ever held. It follows the city's successful hosting of the world's first humanoid robot half marathon in April. At a press conference on Wednesday, Zhang Hui from the Beijing Municipal Bureau of Sports said, by mimicking human movement, the mechanical structure, optimization, and motion algorithm will be enhanced, demonstrating continuous progress in robotics technology and a harmonious vision of robotics and humans coexisting. Nice. The games will feature 11 unique events, according to China Central Television. These include robotic versions of track and field, gymnastics, and soccer, along with performance-based and scenario-based tasks. In the sports category, robots will be tested for speed, coordination, and teamwork, particularly in short-distance sprints, gymnastic routines, and a small team soccer match. In this performance section, experts expect synchronized and solo dance routines. Yes, robots dancing. But perhaps the most fascinating are the scenario-based challenges where robots will take on tasks from real-life professions. These include medicine sorting, concierge services, and industrial material handling, designed to test both motor skills and decision-making capabilities. So there are strict rules and a global outlook. According to Jiang Ginzi, director of the Beijing Municipal Bureau of Economy and Information Technology, robots competing in the games must follow strict rules. All robots must be self-contained, unmarked, and self-powered with no hazardous energy sources involved. Jiang said teams must also provide their own internet connectivity during the games. So they're making each robot has to follow rules. So it's like a robotics event, but you can't have them, be powered by plutonium or uranium or something hazardous or toxic. That's funny. And each team has to provide its own internet connection, which is another task on its own. Like what goes into making your own internet? He also emphasized the importance of international cooperation. It is imperative to strengthen global exchanges and cooperation and enhance interaction and collaborating among research, industry, and end users, Jing added. A week of robotics in Beijing, the humanoid robot games will run just after another major event, the 2025 World Robot Conference, or WRC, scheduled for August 8th through the 12th. The WRC will mark its 10th anniversary with about 200 robotics companies expected to showcase their latest innovations. In an ex-post, People's Daily China called the Humanoid Robot Games the world's first multi-sport competition for humanoid robots, highlighting that they will test athletic and functional skills across a wide range of areas. So we're getting to the point where our robots are now competing, right? We have a robot Olympics here. So that's that article right there. Related, we have the robots race against humans for first time in Beijing half marathon. So this is kind of like a little test of what it's going to be like. This is one of the robots doing this. Fair use to Guardian News. 21 humanoid robots join thousands of Let me go back a little bit. Let's see what that said. 21. Pause it. It will not let me pause chat. Okay. 21 humanoid robots joined thousands of runners at the half marathon in Beijing. And the first time they have raced alongside humans over a 21-kilometer, 13-mile course. The robots were accompanied by human trainers who trailed them into the race's completion. Some of the robots showed off their physical prowess after the event. It didn't fare so well, so I guess not all the robots are equally, created and have the same, abilities. This robot right here doesn't look like it was programmed the right way. This one eventually got up and took off from the starting line. Nice. Okay. So we made a recovery. You see all the huge crowd there, watching this and, intrigued by this over there in China. So this is obviously something big and something that they push onto the society is, innovating in technology and AI and things like that, which is a good idea for, because that's where we're heading, right, with AI and how everything's, revolutionizing and advancing. One of the robots completely lost control and crashed into the railing. The machines then participated in an award ceremony after the marathon. China has one of the world's leading robotic sectors. Yeah, we focus on it more than anybody. They're constantly, pushing the advancement of AI over there. And they don't have, of course, as we talked about before, the same FDA regulations and standards that they're upholding to at like in the United States, obviously. So that's amazing. That's awesome that, we're getting to the point where our robots are, competing. And now shifting gears to something that's making headlines and sparking discussions. Here's the latest insight into President Trump's Middle East trip and trade talks. Let's pull that up right here. Of course, Trump is always going around doing something, which is good. We need a leader that is going to actually be proactive with international policy. Let's stop sharing this and share this instead. So China, of course, we've had our trade, wars with them when it comes to tariffs and whatnot. But China trade deal sparks demand shock fears. This is from Axios.com. With the China trade deal in hand, there could be a surge of new orders in coming days as businesses release months of pent-up demand. Why it matters, that could be just as bad for supply chains as the trade war was in the first place. The big picture, trade in goods between the US and China collapsed in the wake of the original 145% tariff. Sailings were canceled while containers sat empty after demand evaporated. The Port of Los Angeles, the biggest U.S. point of entry for goods-laden containers, currently estimates year-over-year double-digit declines for 2 of the next 3 weeks. Businesses started losing their nerve months ago when President Trump ratcheted up tariffs on China, losing it entirely when he raised duties to 145% in early April. Yes, but imagine what happens when every single U.S. merchant who does business in China tries to place orders at the same time, get them across the ocean at the same time, and deliver them to warehouses at the same time. The manufacturers are not going to just magically be able to meet the demand. Jason Miller, a professor of supply chain management at Michigan State University, recently told Axios. How it works: demand shock. When a sudden surge in demand overwhelms the system, can be just as dangerous as supply shock. As the Peterson Institute noted in February 2024, demand shocks in the post-pandemic era played a clear part in the inflation of the period. It was only last fall that high freight rates threatened global supply chains, according to the United Nations. Rates are now a small fraction of what they were a few months ago, but things can change quickly if everyone is trying to book the same ships. State of play. Ocean shipping rates are expected to soar, followed by trucking rates as importers pounce on another reprieve. But that may come too late and prompt deals and bankruptcies for port truckers and other haulers that have already struggled through a 3-year freight recession. So, flashback. The pandemic and its ensuing disruption proved that money is more fungible than supply chains, wrote Jason Thomas, the head of global research and investment strategy at Cario Group. A household could spend money earmarked for a cruise on camping equipment or a hot tub instead, Thomas notes. But it was not as easy to transform that unused cruise ship capacity into tents, sleeping bags, air jets, or spa pumps. Thankfully, the truce should spare us having to relearn the same lesson again in somewhat different context, Thomas Axios says. What to watch? Look for, Thomas tells Axios rather, what to watch. Look for a quick reaction from businesses that want to refill their inventories before any more major changes happen. So this indices that show container demand in China and trucking demand in the U.S. could start to move sharply in coming weeks for a steady day. So that's what's been going on with some of Trump's trade talks. And in related news, we have, let's talk about something else, another interesting one with plenty of angles to explore. So Gen Z, right, my generation, is under a mental health crisis. To be expected, right? Because we are the first generation that has been introduced to social media at this rate, to technology at this rate, and those things right there alone cause immense amounts of depression, right? So Gen Z's mental health movement, let's talk about it. We have here from verywellmind.com a mind reading for 2025. A mind reading for 2025, our mental health forecast. So in the past few years taught us anything about Gen Z is that mental health for them is everything, right? Despite the fact that we've learned that they're struggling the most with their mental health among any other generation, it remains one of the most important aspects of their daily life. So according to a new Very Well Mind survey, 63% of Gen Z say their mental health in the last month was less than good, compared to 52% millennials, 49% of Gen X, and 28% of boomers, stemming largely from sleep problems, loneliness, financial concerns, job stress, social media, and more. So we mentioned social media already, but job stress, that's another thing we talk about here on the podcast a lot. Not only is job stress hard, is it hard for jobs, after college for people to find jobs and actually get into a career field that's going to be able to sustain them and allow them to provide for themselves and the future of family, right? They have to deal with upcoming AI, and that is going to cost a lot of jobs, and it's going to significantly impact job stress even more. Financial concerns also has to do with job stress. Loneliness, of course, there's a pandemic of loneliness, especially in males. You have the rise of incel culture and things like that. And also for women, I assume that it's also hard for them too with the advancement of social media. They have too many options, which is causing them to not be able to actually get the right mate, right? And then sleep problems, that just overall lack of health in the Gen Z, lack of concern for health. I feel like Gen Z has been one of the generations that actually, puts a significance on health, mental health and physical health. But, sleep problems, that's something that most generations probably deal with, I assume. But Gen Z more so with technology and, them constantly being on their phones and blue light, being on their iPads, a bunch of iPad kids, kids that can't eat meals without having to look at their device, things like that. It's really going to cause, and as we're reading here, decline in mental health. So the percent of individuals whose mental health was less than good in the last month by generation, we have a chart here. Boomers being the happiest generation, it appears, followed by Gen X and then millennials. And yes, we get the term mental health is broad. So we asked more than a handful of individuals what it really means to them. So this female, 27 years old, on mental health, she says, it's being able to cope with the stressors of everyday life in healthy ways, and acknowledging that I may not always feel good, but learning ways to manage what comes up in my life. So as the first true therapy generation, right, Gen Z has a heightened understanding of how it affects every inch of their well-being. So younger generations have gotten more mental health information from more sources in the past month, and Gen Z is the only generation where the majority have worked with a mental health professional before. So it's kind of crazy to think that, you're so enlightened and you know so much about mental health and you're educated about it and you have therapists and you see counselors, but yet you're still the most, you still have the worst mental health out of any of the generations. So you have the most information, yet you're still affected by it the most, which says a lot, about, diagnoses, just the fact that there is a diagnosis makes a person more likely to have it, right? So for instance, ADHD, the founder of ADHD later stated that it was a false diagnosis, right? So just because there is something like ADHD out there, someone is going to think that they have it, which says a lot about human nature in general. So to get a sense of how big of a role mental health plays in our day-to-day, we surveyed 2,000 respondents, 995 of which were Gen Z, for our Gen Z mental health study from September to October of 2024. In it, we did a deep dive into how Gen Z consumes information related to mental health, the words they prefer when discussing mental health, how they care for their mental health compared to other generations, and what topics resonate with this audience. Based on what we learned from our findings and how current trends are shaping up, we're calling the following predictions for the rest of 2025. So for a long time, look good, feel good has been the dominant subliminal messaging in the world of corporate branding. Groups of impossibly beautiful people having a great time together, implying that you could be in their shoes if only you would use this or that product. While those days aren't entirely over, the tide is turning, with brands increasingly seeking to embrace mental health, empathy, and authenticity as central pillars of their business. As younger people unite behind the idea that mental health is everything to them, companies are listening. From Maybelline's Brave Together initiative to the ASICS Personal Best campaign, it's clear that you don't have to be a mental health brand to think about mental health. In 2025, some of the biggest brands in the world will continue to normalize mental health conversations, helping more of us feel seen and heard in ways we haven't before. So we have such a emphasis on mental health, but physical health obviously should be just as important. If you're taking care of yourself, you're getting sunlight, exercise, you're eating right, that's going to influence your mental health in ways that you can't even imagine. So that's something we should be focusing on, in my opinion. Mental health. So this is a 24-year-old male on mental health. So let's see what he says. He says, mental health is the body we have that we don't see. It's like a large storage tank. It can overflow, and you have to handle and separate it and organize it, or it will become clustered. If you say so, I guess, that's kind of, in my opinion, putting too much, giving too much power to your mental health. You got to treat it like a little baby and be all delicate with it. No, you need to harden yourself. You need to make yourself stronger so that mental health is not even a focus. It's not even a thought. You can focus on the tasks that you have at hand during the day, right? Mental health should not be something that you have to prioritize. It should be something that is a after effect of the positive behaviors and improvements that you make and decisions and behaviors that you make on a day-to-day basis, right? So this shift will help to break long-standing stigmas around mental health issues and force more brands to meet their consumers, aka all of us, on our level rather than some impossible standard we'll never reach. It's music to the ears of Gen Z, over 50% of whom would have a more positive perception of a brand that includes mental health in its messaging. Simply stated, younger generations care more openly about mental health and wellness and want to see this reflected in the actions of businesses and brands they choose to support. So this is Gen Z, being liberal, very liberal generation. This makes sense, right? That they want to see businesses and brands, kind of, cope to their cope to tend to their cope rather. So, it's a very emotional argument, to want to see mental health being represented in brands and things like that. But over 50% of Gen Z would have a more positive perception of a brand that includes mental health in its messaging. So we live in a consumer society. There's no getting around that. But what we can and will do in 2025 is lift up the brands that strive to connect with us on a deeper, more personal level. Right? So let's see. So why Gen Z is more open to talking about their mental health. And so this is pretty much an understanding generational differences in mental health. So Gen Z mental health differs from that of previous generations, and they are a lot more open about sharing their struggles. Gen Z refers to a generation born roughly between 1997 and 2012. They are the first generation to be completely raised with the internet and smartphones and have grown up with a very different experience of the world than previous generations. Specifically, they are interconnected globally with a diverse range of people and largely communicate through technology and social media. This generation of over 60 million people in the United States is slowly starting to face real world challenges. Gotta love the ads. Like paying for school, finding a job, and managing stress of daily life as an adult. This raises the question, how is Gen Z handling their mental health compared to previous generations? They have grown up in tumultuous times that have included multiple stressors such as 9/11, school shootings, climate change, a global pandemic, and a political unrest. But this generation has consistently proven itself to be one that openly speaks about mental health. At a glance, Gen Z mental health has faced many challenges, including anxiety about mass shootings, excessive screen time, loneliness, life stress, climate change, self-care challenges, and the current political climate. The good news is that they are also more willing to talk about their challenges and seek mental health care than previous generations. So why is Gen Z using therapy more than previous generations? In a report released by the American Psychiatric Association entitled Stress in America Generation Z in October 2019, Gen Z were more likely to have received treatment or gone to therapy 37% of the time, compared to millennials at 35% of the time, Gen Xers at 26% of the time, baby boomers at 22% of the time, and the silent generation at 15% of the time. Furthermore, Gen Z were more likely to report their mental health as fair or poor about 27% of the time, compared to their older counterpart generations, namely millennials and Gen X, which millennials at 15% and Gen X at 13% of the time. So the older the person, more than likely, the least likely they are to have received treatment or gone to therapy, which I find interesting. So the older generations really didn't believe in, they more than likely probably thought it was soft, or you didn't believe in necessarily having to go to talk to someone else. They probably sought their priest, or perhaps an elder or a parent, but that's not something that they, emphasize as much. So the reason for this trend of increasing use of mental health services and reporting mental health being poor is likely threefold. First, increased stress. Life has introduced a variety of stressors, leading to increased psychological concerns and more need for services for mental health. Secondly, increased awareness. Awareness of mental health issues has grown so that what once was might have been ignored is recognized as a problem and treated as such. So decreased stigma. So the stigma around using mental health services has lessened, making it more likely that Gen Z will identify their own issues and seek help when they feel they have a mental health problem that can be treated. So there is increased psychological concerns among Gen Z. They have numerous reasons to feel more stressed than previous generations. Ultimately, stress can contribute to psychological concerns such as anxiety and depression. Below are some of the stressors that may be contributing to increased psychological issues among Gen Z. So we have fear of mass shootings. Reports suggest that 75% of Gen Z respondents, so 315 to 17-year-olds, reported feeling stress about mass school shootings in the Stress in America survey conducted by the Harris Poll on behalf of APA in July and August 2018. Hold on, before we get into the next psychological concern among Gen Z, let's test out our audio. Make sure everything sounds good. Let's test out. All right, sound good. Okay, so we have increased screen time and isolation. Also, guys, if you're in the chat, let me know what's up, how your day's going. We have a couple of people in the chat. Let me know what's up. So the next psychological concern is increased screen time and isolation. In another poll, it was reported that almost half of Gen Z respondents reported being connected online for 10 or more hours a day. More screen time means less time spent connecting with others in person, which could increase feelings of isolation and loneliness. Being ultra connected could also mean more pressure and expectations with less downtime. Example, if you're doing schoolwork, work online, and so there is greater stress. In the APA report, 91% of Gen Z respondents reported experiencing physical or psychological symptoms due to stress. Causes of stress were identified as money or work at 64%, debt at 33%, and housing at 31%, and hunger, wow, at 28%. Of these, only half reported that they were doing enough to manage their stress. See, so you got people out there, complaining of the stress, but they're not doing anything to mitigate or improve their situation, right? So a lazy generation, relying mostly on their parents, and not working a lot of times, facing the depths. And obviously there are things that contribute to that, like as we talked before, the advancement of AI and technology. But these things are not going to stop, right? This is forever going to happen and even get stronger and increase, which is going to create even more greater stress, right? So Gen Z may also have increased stress due to world issues such as climate change, political climate, immigration, and fear about the future in general. So exposure to harmful content on social media. Gen Z is the first generation to be exposed to potentially harmful content through social media at a young age. Example, self-harm videos. Research from the University College London found that Gen Z was more likely to self-harm, have a poor body image, or skip sleep rather, be overweight, and have depression. Gen Z also faces pressure related to social media and technology, including harassment, sexual or otherwise, bullying, and the need to conform. It is possible. So let's get into why Gen Z is more open about their mental health. So let's get into awareness. So it is possible also that the increased usage of therapy by Gen Z is a result of this generation being more open about their mental health. Being more aware of and accepting of mental health concerns in general will lead to more open discussion about psychological problems and how to manage stress. So what is the reason for Gen Z being more open about their mental health? There is likely multiple reasons. Prior generations may have paved the way for Gen Z's openness through increasing awareness of mental health and public campaigns to reduce stigma. When these people on the internet talk about their mental health struggles, this makes it easier for others around the world to talk about theirs too. Social media and the internet have connected Gen Z with other people's stories, be it strangers on the internet or celebrities and influencers. So Gen Z, they're basically living through others, right? Through the internet, through the phone, and they're not actually creating a life of their own. They're not actually hustling. They're not actually, putting in the work that it takes to actually create the life that they want. They'd rather, look to influencers or celebrities and live through them, which in the long run is going to create a mental health problem, right? Because the older you get and the more, the harder, you become, you have more, responsibilities, and you are going to need to have, a solid platform for yourself, your own income, your own house, things like that. If you want to be able to start a family and, live in society normally, right, and function properly. So normalizing conversations about mental health means that Gen Z can deal with their issues and move on rather than staying stuck. And that's the choice many of them are making. This generation doesn't want to be held back by mental health concerns. Rather, they'd like to get treatment for them so that they have good mental health to do things that they want to do in life. They don't want to be held back by mental health problems because they have seen that it's possible to feel better and want that for themselves. Right? So they see, celebrities and influencers on the internet living the best life, and then they want to implicate that. But since they're not, actually doing the things a lot of times, then they want to create that life for themselves. Then that creates the mental health problem, which then creates a feedback loop, right? It just, social media, and then depression. So reducing the stigma, why there is less mental health stigma among Gen Z. Another reason that Gen Z might be receiving treatment more often than previous generations is that there is less stigma around them asking for help. Unlike millennials and Gen Xers, who still belong to a generation in which talking about mental health problems or asking for help was viewed as unusual or wrong, Gen Z are part of a cohort who doesn't feel that same stigma. This begs the question, why is there less stigma for this generation? Why has the stigma lessened in an era of Gen Z? So when talking and normalizing mental health treatment, Gen Z has grown up in a world where it's normal and considered natural to get treatment for psychological problems. They don't know any different, so they don't attach any bad feelings to speaking about it. Asking for help for mental health is viewed as a strength rather than a weakness among Gen Z. The same as going to the doctor for a broken bone would be seen as a smart thing to do. So social media to destigmatize social media has helped to normalize mental health problems and reduce stigma among the generation through interconnections, shared understanding, right? So Gen Z has a feeling of social support through their connections online that previous generations did not have. So you have the Gen Xers going to Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, platform on right now, sharing their lives, and getting, support through social media, but that it's not real connections, right? We feel as though they're connections, right? But they're not, right? And so that's where the problem there lies, is that these individuals from Gen Z, they think that, comments and likes under their Instagram pictures or TikTok videos equates to real support. However, it's basically meaningless, right? Unless these supporters are, actually supporting you. Shout out to my Patreon if you want to support the podcast. You go down in that description and hit that Patreon link and join the community, right? But there is not real love or connection there as they may believe, right? So Gen Z has grown up in an age where getting help is promoted and normalized. Example, seeing ads for online therapy on social media. Baby boomers didn't see the internet emerge in many cases until their 40s and 50s. Gen X wasn't regularly on the internet until their late 20s. Some millennials grew up with the internet, but others did not. So in contrast, Gen Z has grown up with a full spectrum of awareness when it comes to mental health. Rather than being hidden in the shadows, mental health is discussed in the same way that one would talk about brushing their teeth or washing their hair. Social media and the internet is largely the driving force behind this change in perspective, along with gradually changing views in mainstream media and public perception. So when calling out the culture, Gen Z has grown up in a world where it is the norm for stigma to be called out as unacceptable. This is especially evident in how language has changed. Example, certain terms referring to mental health have become unacceptable to use because of their negative connotation, such as the R word, right? I'm going to say retard. You can't say that about someone. That's not nice, right? So you basically say we're a soft generation, right? We don't allow, you can get canceled on the internet for doing certain things. Extremely liberal views have taken over the internet. I would say the internet is a liberal platform, right? And so generations prior to Gen Z were often more limited in what they knew about mental health to what their parents told them, what they learned in school, and what was generally whispered or gossiped about in their personal lives and in popular culture. So what other generations can learn from Gen Z when it comes to being more open about their mental health concerns, seeking treatment when it's warranted, and reducing stigma. So here are some takeaways for anyone in the older generation. than Gen Z. So social media isn't all bad, right? There is a tendency for those other generations, particularly Gen X and baby boomers, to consider the internet and online world to be a negative distraction for younger generations. However, this perspective doesn't take into account the benefits of being connected to others on a global scale. Other generations could learn from Gen Z that interconnectedness online allows for a broadening of perspectives, greater tolerance for differences, and more acceptance of mental health issues in general. So, generational learning for those who are parents of Gen Z children, the lessons to be learned is that your children are already likely more open and authentic than you when it comes to mental health, right? So, for this reason, it's important to listen to them when they talk to you about their mental health concerns rather than to brush these off or change the subject. Gen Z is used to talking openly about their mental health, and they need their parents to follow suit, right? So, screen time is connection. Although some from their older generations might equate screen time with isolation and loneliness, Gen Z utilizes screen time to make connections and feel less lonely. Other generations could learn from this in terms of broadening their perspective of what constitutes friendship or connection. Do you have a pen pal? Did you have a pen pal growing up? I know I did. Um, I had friends from all type of different like internet games that I used to like connect with daily. You know, people from social medias that I didn't necessarily know, but we would FaceTime, and a lot of friends like that that I've met from the internet. So let me know if you have any, pen pals or anything like digital friends. Um, don't discount the importance of online connections in an increasingly digital world. No limitations. Previous generations to Gen Z may have used their mental health or mental illness as a reason for being limited in life. However, Gen Z is aware that mental health is just one aspect of their lives and one that can be improved with help. So, other generations could learn that treating mental health isn't showing your weakness, rather, it's building your strength. And I think the way to build that mental health is to build your actual strength, and mental health will come along, right? So if you're focused on working and improving yourself, working on the things that matter, meeting your goals, then your mental health will follow suit in that way and be improved in a positive way. So Gen Z is used to talking openly about their mental health, and other generations could learn from this. Open communications with families, between parents and kids, and among generations will mean less adults with emotional baggage. What's more, talking openly about mental health can help to inform the younger generation of what to expect in their own lives. Knowing that a family member has struggled with a particular issue could help them to communicate with doctors about their own risk. Keeping mental health in the shadows helps no one, right? So finally, Gen Z has taught other generations that being active in your own treatment and recovery is critical for managing stress and moving toward getting what you want out of life. Rather than avoiding the problem, facing it and finding help is the strategy for managing mental health. So the takeaway here is each generation's perspective is rooted in the environment in which they were raised. Regardless of how much stress Gen Z continuously seems to endure, it's true that every generation has had their own type of stress and dealt with it in their own way. Change is necessary to evolve to a better way of living, and this change is inevitable, right? So regardless of what generation you belong to, keep your eyes and ears open so that you can keep current. What might feel wrong to you today could be the norm tomorrow. As they say, the only thing constant is that there will be change, right? So there we go. Got a mental health segment right there for you. To close out the episode today for episode 24 of the Stormcast. And shout out to everybody in the chat. We got 4 people watching live right now. Let's wrap things up with one last topic. This one's got some layers to peel back. We have new U.S. laws regarding AI, gun control, and social media. Let me share a article here from AP News. But first, in 2025, significant new state laws across the U.S. are coming into effect, addressing major issues such as AI and entertainment, social media regulations, gun control, minimum wages, and more. California, for instance, is implementing laws that restrict the use of AI in Hollywood and regulate earnings from child influencers on social media. Multiple states are also introducing new social media restrictions, with some laws facing legal challenges. Okay, we have an article here from AP News. A lot of articles here. Yeah, we're not subscribing them. Sorry. Shout out to AP News though. Fair use. Can you not be on my screen, please? Please, could you just get off my screen? Let's see later. In the X button. All right. So new 2025 laws hit hot topics from AI and movies to rapid fire guns. All right. So this picture right here is the director of photography, Jen Shears, and his son, actor Wyatt Shears, 11, take part in a rally by striking writers and actors outside Netflix studio in LA on Friday, July 14th, 2023. Okay, so that was a strike a while back. This article, December 27, 2024, artificial intelligence, abortion, guns, marijuana, and minimum wages. Name a hot topic, and chances are good there's a new law about it taking effect in 2025 in one state or another. Many of the laws launching in January are a result of legislation passed this year. Others stem from ballot measures approved by voters. Some face legal challenges. So here's a look at some of the most notable state laws taking effect. So we have Hollywood stars and child influencers, California, or California, home to Hollywood and some of the largest technology companies, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, very high in tech and leading over there. Although Austin, Texas, is becoming more and more of a AI and technology company place. So either way, California is seeking to rein in the artificial intelligence industry and put some parameters around social media stars. New laws seek to prevent the use of digital replicas of Hollywood actors and performers without permission, and allow the estates of dead performers to sue over the unauthorized AI use. Right? So if you go on social media, right, you'll see tons and tons of deep fake AI videos where you have someone like Joe Rogan promoting some company or some product that he didn't necessarily endorse himself, right? So you're kind of just using the likeness of someone else, made by AI to either create products or generate income of some sort. But now we're getting to the point where this is going to be outlawed, right? Which is a great thing for the people, and the families of those who can be replicated and used for nefarious reasons. So parents who profit from social media posts featuring their children will be required to set aside some earnings for their young influencers. A new law also allows children to sue their parents for failing to do so. Wow. So now we're getting to the point where parents who have children that, that they film and throw on social media, and, the kid's a baby, but they're making content with it. Now these same kids can sue their parents, which is, they need their money, which is something that makes sense, right? If you're a parent and you're making income off your children, why wouldn't you set aside some of that in the first place, right? But there is greedy individuals, right? So it's a very, selfish, greedy world out there, and now we don't have to. The children who are, being exposed at an early age can now at least, benefit from it. So, in advance of Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri's congressional testimony to illustrate the harms children face on social media, parent activists brought in Instagranch to the Capitol building in Washington, December 7, 2021. I see. Okay, so that's what that picture is right there. You got it. Instagranch. So social media limits, right? New social media restrictions in several states face court challenges. A Florida law bans children under 14 from having social media accounts and requires parental consent for ages 14 and 15. But enforcement is being delayed because of a lawsuit filed by two associations for online companies, with a hearing scheduled for late February. So this already happened, right? Florida trying to outlaw social media for young children. A new Tennessee law also requires parental consent for minors to open accounts on social media. NetChoice, an industry group for online businesses, is challenging the law. Another new state law requires porn websites to verify that visitors are at least 18 years old. But the Free Speech Coalition, a trade association for the adult entertainment industry, has filed a challenge. Right? So these social media companies and porn companies know that banning children under the age of 15 is going to significantly reduce their income, right? All they have are 14 and 15-year-olds on their social media, right? That's what makes up most of their platform. And same with the porn companies. Young, teenage males make up a majority of the cash flow to a lot of these websites, these porn websites, right? So the adult entertainment industry has filed a challenge for that. Interesting. Several new California measures aimed at combating political deepfakes are also being challenged, including one requiring large social media platforms to remove deceptive content related to elections, and another allowing any individual to sue for damages over the use of AI to create fabricated images or videos in political ads. Okay, so now we're getting to school rules on gender. So in a first, nationally, California will start enforcing a law prohibiting school districts from adopting policies that require staff to notify parents if their children change their gender identification. The law was a priority for Democratic lawmakers who wanted to halt such policies passed by several districts. Wow. So parents, at one point were, required to know whether their children wanted to change their gender identity, right? So now there's a law being passed which prohibits the staff or the teachers or of the schools to actually notify the parents if their children want to change their gender, which is not a good day. That's not good, right? I think rather that you should have to notify the parents, right? Because that's something that they should know about. That's, not, it doesn't have anything to do with school, right? That's something that will influence the household and things like that. So that's very important. And sad to see that they're pushing for this law. That's so backwards. California, very typical, because they're big on, very liberal state, right? Big on gay rights and things like that. So this ties in with that, and pretty sick, right? So abortion coverage, right? New law. Many states have passed laws limiting or protecting abortion rights since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a nationwide right to the procedure in 2022. One of the latest is the Democratic-led state of Delaware. A law there will require the state employee health plan and Medicaid plans for lower-income residents to cover abortions with no deductible, co-payments, or other cost-sharing requirements. Wow. So another left-leaning law. And abortion rights, obviously a highly debated, hot topic, very controversial. Personally, I am not a huge supporter of abortion, right? I am under the belief that the United States especially should be increasing our population, right? Because we are decreasing, and we need a workforce. We need a future military, right? So abortion has never been an idea that I even, really think about too much. I just think it's not, morally right. But you have people wanting to kill their own children. And of course, there are stipulations and, reasons why a mother might want to do this. But in most cases, I feel like the woman should take responsibility, accountability, especially if it wasn't a sexual assault or a rape or things like that. And have the child, and not have to have the state fund it, right? That's because that is also gonna come out of the pockets of the taxpayers having to coverage these abortions. Next law we have here is gun control. A new Minnesota law prohibits guns with binary triggers that allow for more rapid fire, causing a weapon to fire out one round when the trigger is pulled and another when it is released. In Delaware, a law adds colleges and universities to a list of school zones where guns are prohibited, with exceptions for those working in their official capacity, such as law officers and commissioned security guards. Right. So pretty much, like a switch, when you put a switch on a Glock or something like that, allowing it to create more rapid gunfire, right? This law is prohibiting binary triggers, right? So you pull the trigger and the gun fires a bullet, and then you release it and the gun fires another. And the next law we have here is medical marijuana. Kentucky is becoming the latest state to let people use marijuana for medical purposes. To apply for a state medical cannabis card, people must get written certification from a medical provider of a qualifying condition, such as cancer, multiple sclerosis, chronic pain, epilepsy, chronic nausea, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Nearly 4/5 of U.S. states have now legalized medical marijuana. And, we're moving in a positive direction here, right? Especially medical marijuana, right? It's so useful, so beneficial for people with cancer, multiple sclerosis, chronic pain, epilepsy, actual debilitating diseases and disorders, right? But where I fall and kind of have a little bit of a pushback is it being so widely available for kids under, not or people not with these diseases, right? For society, I don't feel as though it makes a productive society, right? I am a user of medical marijuana, but I do not abuse it, right? I do not, you know, um, spend my day smoking weed, right? I'm productive, but if at the end of the day, something like a vape pen with THC or CBD or something like that to relieve the stress of or the pain of your condition, it makes sense, right? So I'm for it, Kentucky, and the fact that four fifths of U.S. states have now legalized medical marijuana, that's actually crazy, right? So I feel like you shouldn't even get pulled over or detained or arrested or for marijuana at this point, right? It should pretty much just be okay. If you do have it and it's in a state where it's not technically legal yet, I guess you can get it taken from you, but I don't believe there should be any more serious, convictions or trials, or anything, especially for marijuana, right? So state marijuana laws, most states now allow medical or recreational consumption of marijuana, though it remains illegal at the federal level. Okay, so pretty much the only states here that haven't legalized medical marijuana are Idaho, Wyoming, Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, right? So every other state either has it recreational and medical use or medical use. So we just need South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, some mainly southern states, and Iowa, Wisconsin, Wyoming a little bit, and Idaho to get on board, right? But it's coming, guys. I feel like South Carolina or Texas will more than likely be the last states, as they are the most conservative. And our next law here we have is minimum wages. Minimum wage workers in more than 20 states are due to receive raises in January. The highest minimum wages will be in Washington, California, and Connecticut, all of which will top $16 an hour after modest increases. The largest increases are scheduled in Delaware, where the minimum wage will rise by $1.75 to $15 an hour, and in Nebraska, where a ballot measure approved by voters in 2022 will add $1.50 to the current minimum wage of $12 an hour. The fact that Delaware has a current minimum wage of $1.75 is absolutely despicable. And then, of course, you have Washington, California, and Connecticut with a minimum wage of $16 an hour, which seems high, right? But those three states right there, I believe, have a very high cost of living as well, especially California, right? So it just makes sense. 20 other states still follow the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, which also, seems crazy with constant inflation to be making $7.25 an hour. I don't know how you can support yourself or anyone else with that type of income, right? So we have another law. Oh no, this is not another law. This is continuing with the minimum wage in the states. More than half the states that require employers to pay more than the federal minimum wage of $7.25, which was set in 2009. Many of those are boosting the minimum in January 2025. So this minimum wage increase has already been set in place. So some states allow different wages based on the employer size or type. Some cities have higher minimum wages. And the next law discussed here is safer traveling. So in Oregon, using drugs on public transit will be considered a misdemeanor crime of interfering with public transportation. While the measure worked its way through the legislature, multiple transportation officials said drug use on buses and trains and at transit stops and stations was making passengers and drivers feel less safe. Right? Makes sense. You see somebody doing drugs on your bus, kind of concerning, right? So in Missouri, law enforcement officers have spent the past 16 months issuing warnings to motorists that handheld cell phone use is illegal. Starting with the new year, penalties will kick in: a $150 fine for the first violation, progressing to $500 for a third and subsequent offenses, and up to 15 years imprisonment if a driver using a cell phone causes an injury or death. But police must notice a primary violation, such as speeding or weaving across lanes, to cite motorists for violating the cell phone law. Right, so no longer can you talk on your phone if you're riding a motorcycle or or driving a car, and they are implementing some pretty serious fines and even imprisonment, right, if you hurt someone or cause injury or death. So Montana is the only state that hasn't banned texting while driving, according to the National Conference of State Legislators. And the next law we have is tax breaks. Tenants in Arizona will no longer have to pay tax on their monthly rent, thanks to the repeal of a law that had allowed cities and towns to impose such taxes. While a victory for renters, the new law is a financial loss for governments. An analysis of Arizona's nonpartisan Joint Legislative Budget Committee estimated that $230 million will be lost in municipal tax revenue during the first full fiscal year of implementation. So this is, if you're a tenant in Arizona, that's a good thing for you. But if you are, a landlord, this is not looking good for you in the state of Arizona. Meanwhile, Alabama will offer credits to businesses that help employees with child care costs. Kansas is eliminating its 2% sales tax on groceries. It also is cutting individual income taxes by dropping the top tax rate, increasing a credit for child care expenses, and exempting all Social Security income for taxes, among other things. Taxpayers are expected to save about $320 million a year going forward. So it's looking real good for taxpayers and individuals in Kansas. Scroll down here a little bit. So another law we have is for voting rights. An Oklahoma law expands voting privileges to people who have been convicted of felonies but had their sentences discharged or commuted, including commutations for crimes that have been reclassified from felonies to misdemeanors. Former state senator George Young, an Oklahoma City Democrat, carried the bill in the Senate. He also says here, I think it's very important that people who have gone through trials and tribulations in their life that have been that we have a system that brings them back and allows them to participate as contributing citizens, Young said. So shout out to George Young right there, looking out for felons. But this is positive in that, it gives them a second chance. Although, does it really matter if felons vote? I don't know. You tell me down below. I don't know if that's really important, as they've committed crimes that have been punishable by the court. But it does not, however, make them any less of a human, right? So Associated Press writers Tran Nguyen in Sacramento, California, Kate Payne in Tallahassee, Florida, Jonathan Matisse in Nashville, Tennessee, Randall Chase in Dover, Delaware, Steve Karnowski in Minneapolis, Bruce Schreiner, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so all of these people pretty much contributed to this voting rights law, okay? And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say today's episode has been absolutely amazing. And I want to thank all of you who have joined me for this episode, whether you are one of the 4 people in the live chat, shout out to the live chat if you're using the chat, or whether you are watching the live replay. I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. As always, I love being able to, just come here and share what I got going on in life and to be able to share what's going on around the world with you guys. And I hope you guys find it interesting as I do. I learn something each and every episode along with you guys. And so we're just going to keep rolling out these episodes week by week, every Wednesday. I'm going to stick to that schedule for you guys. And I have some guests on the way as well for you to look forward to. So be on the lookout for that. As always, I got, if you want to support the podcast, the Stormcast, I would like you to go down in that description, hit that Patreon link, and join the Patreon, join the community. There's behind the scenes. All you have to do is request, by the way, for these things. There's behind the scenes. We have unseen and uncensored content on there, as well as a community. We can make calls and talk to one another. So it's just a great environment to join in the Storm Squad. I just want to ask you guys, as always, to let me know what you thought about the episode and the topics, today's topics. Ask questions down below. I implore you to provide your feedback. What did you think? It was a good or bad episode? And let me know what you want me to talk on in future episodes. Storm Squad, it's been a great episode. I love you so much. And I will see you in the next episode. Stay blessed, everybody. Bye. See you in the next one.